Hi guys, welcome back to my second video of the day. Today I want to talk about my journey towards the first chatelaine that I'm stitching right now. And I kind of want to make this video for people who haven't stitched a chatelaine yet and are maybe considering stitching one. Um, it is not, it is a big project and it's not a cheap project to stitch, and I don't think it's the easiest project to get started because there's like all these chart, where do you buy them, what type to get, all these different flosses, show you would you do it all in silks or should you substitute some of them out for DMC, even like all the specialty stitches and what needs to be done. So I'm gonna just go through my entire process and all the work I did in it because I'm I'm a researcher by nature, so I'll look into pretty much all the aspects before I make my decision. So I want to share that with you, along with some of the things that I found during the stitching of my chatelaine. So a disclaimer here, I'm by no means an expert whatsoever. I've only stitched one and only like two small parts of one chatelaine. Before this chatelaine, I've never stitched specialty stitches before, which is actually, now I'm saying it, not really true, because just before I started this chatelaine, I started the twisted band sampler by Northern Expressions Needlework. So that was the very first time I had specialty stitches, but they're totally doable. If you think that specialty stitches are too complicated or that you don't know how to do them or whatever, it's putting you off, don't worry. The chatelaine patterns have really clear stitch diagrams, and yes, you might need to practice the first two or three so you understand properly what the diagram is trying to tell you, but it's by no means rocket science or something that you need to spend days on figuring out. So don't let that put you off. Anyway, so continuing with the disclaimer, yeah, so this is my take as a newbie on chatelaines, and I'm gonna very much focus it on the one that I picked, the Holland Springtime Mandala. I can't speak about the other chatelaines because I've never stitched them and I don't have the materials for it either. So yeah, so let's get started by talking about how did I choose which one to stitch. So there's so many of them, and I knew for sure that I wanted to stitch a mandala, which is the one with the different parts and that are basically in there's a center, and she generally has like something on on each side, top, bottom, left and right, and then something in the corner and then a border around it. So I definitely wanted to stitch one of those. And I didn't really want to stitch one that was too symmetrical because I didn't want to have to stitch the the same four panels over and over again. And then I wanted to stitch one that I could buy from European Cross Stitch, the website itself, because at that time, Martina was still selling her newer classes through her Yahoo groups as an actual class, and I just found it a little bit confusing to go through the whole class system and whatnot. So I decided, you know what, there's already so many great patterns that she has that are already available through European Cross Stitch, so let me focus on those. And then I also some of the city samplers, mandalas, were really speaking to me, but I haven't visited any of those cities, and I always feel that it is a lot more meaning if you've been there. Like for instance, Venice, the Venice mandala is beautiful, and I would love to stitch it, but I want to visit Venice first before I stitch it, because otherwise, I think it's so much more meaningful if I've been to the city. So that took off a whole lot of cities off my list. Then I think I finally narrowed it down to the Holland Springtime, which has a special connection to me because I've lived in Holland for a few years, and my home country is a ex-Dutch colony, so I speak Dutch, and Dutch, whatever, Holland, it's all part of my cultural heritage, really. And then I wanted to stitch pomerium, Herbularius, as well as deep blue sea. Um, in the end, let me actually show you which ones those are in case you're not that familiar. So this one is the Herbularius, the medieval garden. It is one of the mandalas in the whole series. The pomerium is the other one. Beautiful, I love it. And the last one I was contemplating is the deep blue sea, which here you can see it on a white background, but I've seen people stitch it on a dark blue, which is just amazing, amazing. It was really a toss-up between the deep blue sea, and the Holland springtime, because the pomerium and the Herbularius, they were very expensive compared to the other ones. I think they were $280 or $300 for the entire kit with fabric at the European cross stitch, and the Holland springtime came to $200 if you don't take the NPI silks, and I think the deep blue sea was $240 for the full kit. So it's a little bit more reasonable compared to the other two. So it was really a toss-up between the Holland one and the sea, and the reason I went with the Holland one is because I'm already stitching something with an octopus in it, as well as I knew I wanted to start the twisted band sampler on black with rainbow colorway, and I wanted to stitch the deep blue sea on a dark blue navy fabric as well, and I didn't want to have two big projects that are on dark fabric. You know how hard it is to stitch on dark fabric, so I wanted to limit that to one project only. So then talked to Andrew, my boyfriend, about it, and he agreed that the Holland springtime sampler would be beautiful. I talked to him because two things. This is something I definitely would want to frame and put on my wall, and our rule is that if we want to put something on our wall, we discuss it first. And second, I wanted him to pay for it. I know. My birthday was coming up, so this was towards like October last year, right? And my birthday is in January, so I thought maybe he could, I don't really care too much for birthday gifts and random things like that, but generally, if I want something, I'll buy it. But in this case, I thought, well, maybe he can pay half of this, and that could go towards my birthday gift, and then he doesn't need to worry about anything else. He agreed, so that was nice, and so I decided on that. And then the next decision was, shall I buy the kit from European Cross Stitch, or shall I try to source the silks myself? I already knew at that point that I wasn't going to go with the NPI silks. It would cost $100 just for the silks alone, and the DMCs would be a lot cheaper. And I can get the DMCs locally, or I pretty much had some of them already. So so DMC it was. Done with that. And then I also knew I wanted to stick with the fabric that European cross stitch had, because the mandalas are kind of what's it called, square in size. So in this case, my fabric comes to like 27 or maybe 28-inch square, and for that size of fabric, I would need to buy a full yard, and I would have leftover. And I think a full yard would have cost me a lot more than what European Cross Stitch was charging for the fabric, which I think is like $24. So I decided just to stick with their fabric in the antique white. At this time, I didn't want to make it more complicated by picking another color fabric and hand dye fabric, especially since the hand dye fabric, for a full yard would probably run me at least 50 bucks or more, God knows. So try to keep costs down and stuck with the antique white. I also stuck with the beads, that European cross stitch, the kit. I knew I wanted their bead kit because everyone's raving about them, and they come in these little adorable bottles, which is so much cuter, I think, honestly, than the Mill Hill bead containers. They look kind of cheapo, but I think these look so beautiful. And European cross stitch also included a little spool of invisible thread as well as beading needles with it, so that's amazing. So I knew I wanted to go with European cross stitch for some of the stuff. And then I started looking at other sites and looking at the prices of their threads. So I haven't purchased a pattern yet at this point, but if you go to the Chatelaine Yuku board, they have, the members have really kindly put up material lists for all of the charts, so you can copy that and then go to various sites to see whether they have it in stock and what the prices are and all that. Keep in mind that I'm in Canada, and I definitely, I won't say most likely, definitely have to pay shipping for anything that I purchase online. So I definitely have to keep shipping in mind, and a little bit the exchange rate, but not very much, because when I was looking into this in October last year, the exchange rate US Canadian was pretty good. It was about maybe 8 or 10% or so, but it wasn't huge, considering, you know, anything I buy locally is subject to 13% tax, sales tax anyway, so it wasn't a big factor. So let me look at my spreadsheet, because I did look at all of them. So first of all, I tried to kind of figure out if some of the fancy silks could be substituted with DMCs, especially if they were mostly, you know, solid silks. I looked at all the pictures of the color numbers that were listed in the material list, and based on that itty bitty picture that they put on people on the website, I try to estimate. It was hard. It was very hard to do. Martina also has a suggested DMC substitution for her silks, but most of them she basically writes not available, or, you know, not available, such and such is possible, which I kind of take to mean that, you know, you're not getting the full range of it, because the silk is probably variegated, and she's picking the most dominant color out of it or something. So after spending a day or so looking at various silk colors and trying to figure out what the best DMC matches and how variegated they were on the website, you know, because I wasn't looking at these in person, I decided, you know what, let it go. Just go for the silks. This is my first time doing a chatelaine. I also kind of wanted to try out the different silks. I've heard so much about the different brands, and I was kind of really curious to see, you know, what a Gloriana stitch up like versus a Dinky Dyes or whatever. So, you know, I decided I'm gonna go with the silks. And then the next step was then, okay, let's see if European cross stitch is giving me the best deal, or if I can get it cheaper somewhere else, especially if there's sales going on, right? So I looked at a few sites. Let me see here. I looked at Stitching Bits and Bobs. I looked at 123 Stitch, but they were missing one of the threads. So in the end, I had to kick them out of the running. I think they were missing maybe the Petite Treasure braids. One of them. I can't remember which one, but I had to kick them out, which was a shame because their prices are pretty good. I looked at ABC Stitch. I looked at Nordic Needle. I looked at what's it called? Needle. Let me see if I can open this up. Oh, I can't. There's a store called Needle and an H. I can't open up my column, so I don't know which store it is. And I also looked at a local store, Gita's, which is about half an hour from me, so I also wanted to check out a Canadian store. So from all the prices I got, the cheapest one for all the quantities of silk and Petite Treasure braids, and this doesn't include the fabric or the beads, the cheapest package I could assemble before shipping was from Stitching Bits and Bobs, which came up to $151.25. However, the shipping was $21, so that brought the total to $172.25. The next cheapest one was just Nordic needle at $154.05. And the most expensive one was my local store, which is in Canadian dollars as well, so that was $204.40. So that's quite a big difference between $151 to $204. And can you guess what European's cross stitch price is for just the floss, without the beads, without the fabric? It is $148.15. Plus their shipping was only $10. So yeah, I really did do all my research, and I added up the numbers, and it just turns out that European cross stitch does have the cheapest package available, the cheapest kit available for your Chatelaine flosses. So I went with them, and I was very happy because shortly after I decided this, Cindy at European Cross Stitch decided to have a early Thanksgiving sales. So apparently normally she does it the Thanksgiving weekend, but then she got so overwhelmed with orders, and sorry, some of the floss had to be ordered in, and then people wouldn't get their packages in time for Christmas, so she decided to start it early in November. And her sale was, I think, 10% off her kits, not on the patterns though. So that was perfect, because I told Andrew about it, and he said we should order it now. So I did. We ordered the Holland Springtime full kit with fabric minus the NPI silks. And Cindy did warn us that it's going to take a while to fill these orders because she expects to be getting lots of these. So I was perfectly fine waiting a few weeks. I didn't expect to get it for Christmas whatsoever. So I just sat back and waited. So here's one thing though. Before I ordered, I knew from her Facebook group, and I think maybe even the Chatelaine Facebook group, that if you place your chart order at the same time as your kit order during one of these sale events, you're not going to get the chart. And I'm talking about the PDF chart here, not the paper chart, but you're not going to get the PDF chart emailed to you right away. Cindy's going to wait until your kit is ready to be shipped, and then she will email the PDF chart to you. I think this makes it easier for her to keep track of things. As well, she explained that, when you get the chart in your email, that's when you know your kit is on the way already, so you can get really excited. I didn't want it to happen, so I didn't order the chart with my kit order. I planned to order the chart at a later time. Plus, the chart wasn't applicable for the discount anyway, so I was like, yeah, I'll do it later. Okay, so then that gave me the opportunity to also assess, do I want a paper chart or a PDF chart? And from what everyone says on Facebook, they all say, mostly say PDF charts, because first of all, the PDF chart comes in color, so you can print it out in color, and especially when you have back stitching on it, it is so much easier to see the back stitching in color. Makes a lot of sense. The PDF chart, you can also maximize it as much as you want, and then print that out or put it on your iPad and mark it off that way, which I like. I don't like to stitch from my tablet because I don't know, I just like paper. And even with Chatelaines, I don't really mark off my chart on the paper. I just use it as a guideline because there's not a lot of confetti, and most of them follow a very logical progression, or like some sort of squiggly line that you can kind of follow. So I don't really mark my paper chart either. But anyway, so I went for the PDF and ordered it maybe somewhere in December or so, and I got it emailed to me pretty quickly. Something to keep in mind when you order from European Cross Stitch is that in both situations, I choose the PayPal option. And when you choose the PayPal option, you finish your order, but you're not brought to the PayPal page like with other vendors that I'm used to. So you don't really pay yet at that point. So what happens is you get an email confirmation saying that you want to place your order with PayPal, and then what Cindy will do is in a day or so she will send you a PayPal invoice, and then you click on that link and you pay it that way. So if you ever do that, if you want to pay via PayPal on Cindy's website, just keep in mind and don't panic when you hit pay and then nothing happens and you get a confirmation and you're like, oh my god, did I pay? Did it really go through? Do I need to call or email her to ask if I need to pay or something? So don't worry, she will send you a invoice manually a day or two later. Okay, so that was everything related to really buying the chart, buying the kit. I did get my kit just before Christmas, and it was beautifully packaged. Unfortunately, I don't have pictures of it anymore, and I can't show you because obviously I've already unpacked it. But if you Google some of the Chatelaine kits, you can see, I'm sure you can see tons of pictures of the beautiful kits that Cindy puts together. So then the next part I want to talk about is stitching the design, and also substitutions, because now that I have the floss in my hands and I've stitched with it and I've seen it, I kind of can make I guess my recommendation anyways, of if you wanted to save money and you wanted to substitute some of these expensive silks with DMC or other cotton flosses. I think there are a few where you can definitely do that and not really lose a lot of the, you won't really be able to notice the difference. And then there are a few where I think that yes, it is pretty much worthwhile to get the silk floss, or at least the over dyed effect. So for instance, one of the tips I read about is that if you can't afford the water lilies, which is the Karen silks, then you can also get the wild flowers, I think, which is the cotton over dyed equivalent. So it's a lot cheaper, because I think the water lilies are about like $7 or $8 a skein. I know it's insane how expensive some of these are. So I'm just gonna get a glass of water because I've been talking here for a long time, and then I'll be right back to talk about substitutions and how I started, how I got about to stitching the whole massive piece, and where to start and how to attack it and all that stuff. So just hang on, I'll be right back. Hey guys, welcome back. Sorry for the short break. So here is my work in progress. Since last time I was able to put the tulips on top of the border here, which makes such a difference. Honestly, I was getting a little bit bored stitching the leaves and the stems because it's like green and it didn't look like much. But once you start putting in those hot pinks and light pinks and the tulips appear, it is just beautiful. So I finished this entire panel on top, which is a little boat sailing on a stream, and all that's left to do here is I think whatever beads are needed, but all the specialty stitches and metallics are done. Generally when I'm stitching this, I try to stitch with the DMC and the silks first, using all the regular full cross stitches. Then I will do the specialty stitches, and or I might do the metallics depending on what the location is. The metallics I want to do when there's enough stitches around in the surrounding area to anchor it in, because otherwise it's very hard to anchor metallic underneath itself. So I try to run it underneath cotton or silk flosses in the area. So yeah, so this is how far I've gotten so far really, and it's a huge piece of fabric, so I still have so much more to do. I'm taking a break from this right now, and when I come back to it, I'm not really sure whether I should do maybe another panel to the side, or whether I'll stitch some of the corner elements and work my way towards the bigger border. There's like 1 and 2 corner motifs. There's like one corner one and then the Delft tile here as well, which I kind of want to do. So I'll decide when it's time. Right now I'm stitching on the octopus piece, which I'm loving, and I've neglected that way too long. So anyways, oh yeah, another thing. See these, like, so these are some of the motifs that get repeated in each corner every time. And in the beginning, I was kind of stitching it by color, so I would pick one color, stitch some here, and then keep on going all 4 corners until that color was done. And then I got so impatient because it didn't feel like I was finishing anything, and I was very, very curious to see how a corner would actually stitch up and what it would look like. So yeah, that's when I changed tactics and I just used a bunch of different colors and I finished a corner, and I find that so much more satisfying because then that itch is scratched, and then you can go on and do the other ones, and then you know where they go, like all the different colors where they kind of go, so it goes a little bit faster too. So yeah, so you might want to try out for yourself what works for you. For me, I definitely like stitching one first and then learning from that and going on to the other ones. So something else about the chart that isn't in the what do you call it, the material list online. So here, I don't know if you can see it, but this is the material list from the chart. And yeah, it's kind of hard to see, but basically what I'm trying to show you is that Martina very thoughtfully includes what percentage or what part of the skein is needed for the design. So for instance, here in this one, the dinky dies down under blues, you need 1.31 skeins. So you need 2 skeins basically, but you know that you have 0.6 or 0.7 skeins, 2/3 of a skein left over, which is kind of handy to know, because if I was going to stitch another chatelaine and I notice it uses the same color, then depending on how many stitches or how much yardage you need for that particular skein, I could kind of like decide to, that I don't need to buy a whole new skein, because if it only uses about 1/3, or maybe even 1/4 of the skein, then I can use my leftover and I don't need to buy a whole new one. So I really appreciate that in Martina's chart, her material list. Yeah. So the next thing is I want to talk about this column, because these are her DMC substitutions for the NPI silks, and then the possible substitutions for the other silks. So I'm going to take this on my lap, but I want to show you what I've laid out here and hope you can see this. So basically what I've done is I've gone through all the silks and I've pulled out the ones that I think can be safely substituted for a solid colored DMC without losing too much of the effect, and then some of the ones which I think are definitely worth keeping. So I might want to do this in order, because Martina also recommends some substitutions for her silks. So for instance, she might say straight up that you can substitute it with color number XXX. Or she might say not available, but XYZ is possible. So the first one kind of means that yes, this would be a pretty accurate substitute for this. And the second one, not available, something is available, it's possible, kind of means that yeah, you could, but you'd probably be losing some of the effect if you went with a different kind of colorway. So let's look at those. For instance, she recommends that the holiday blue, which is a Gloriana thread, which is this beautiful bright blue, I hope you can see this, can be substituted with 824. And then when you look at it on the camera, they seem pretty close, but in person, 824 is a more muted blue, whereas this one is a bright electric blue, and I think 820 is actually a much better substitute. And caveat here is that obviously this depends on the dye lot of the floss that I got. It could be that this particular blue that I got from Gloriana was extra bright or something, and that someone else has a more muted version. But definitely my recommendation for the what's it called again, the Holiday Blue Gloriana thread would be 820. And then the other one that Martina recommends you can substitute is the Gloriana Avonlea Green, which is a really nice medium green, and 3345, which she recommends, is pretty much spot on. So yeah, that's another one you can substitute for DMC. Then the next one is Gidgee, which is by Dinky Dyes. It's a very beautiful, honestly, I wish you could feel this, because Dinky Dyes, their silk is so soft. I can tell the diff. It's weird because all the silks are soft, but when I touch the Dinky Dyes, I'm like, oh yeah. Anyway, so it's very soft. It's a nice bright green that's on the yellow side. The color that she recommends is 580. I don't have that, and I don't know what it looks like, but I went through my box and I think 280 is a pretty good match. It's maybe a little bit more yellow than this one, but I think it was a pretty good match. And also this colorway is actually pretty solid. So all the ones I've shown you so far are pretty solid colorways, so you can, you know, safely substitute it. Then the next one is Spanish Moss, again by Gloriana, and it is basically, if you look at these side by side, a darker, not quite as bright version, a more olivey version of the Gidgee. And 3012 is a pretty good substitute. Let me just double check again. Did she recommend something Spanish Moss? Martina recommends 734, which again I don't have in my stash, so I can't tell, but from a little floss pool, I think 3012 works fairly well as well. Then the next one she recommends that can be substituted is Thread Gatherers, Silken Colors, Periwinkle Blue. You can see clearly on the camera that the silk is more purpley, whereas the substitution according to Martina, 3755, is a baby blue. And I don't know if you saw my whip update video for February-March, because when I was doing the half stitches for the sky, I was very surprised to see that they were like a purplish color instead of what I thought would be a bluish color like this. But I stitched it anyway, and it looks really good. So I think Martina is here not going for like a straight substitution, like color for color, but more for the overall effect that it's intended to have in the design. So that's up to you. You can use either one. It has some, I would say, very, very, very slight variegation in the purple. I don't think it's really that noticeable, so you can substitute it with a different color DMC if you like. Here is one that Martina did not put on her list of possibles. This is Down Under Blues by Dinky Dyes, and she has 939 as a possible, which I don't have again. It's kind of hard to see. So there's a bunch of different blues in here, mostly dark blues, and from stitching with it, I think it could be substituted. I mean, it's not as if it's going to be a dramatic shift in colors. I don't have the recommended 939 in my stash, but 803 on the left and 823 on the right are kind of the closest I was able to get, and 803 being the lighter version and 823 the slightly darker version. So if you had something in between there, which might be 939, then it would be pretty perfect. So those are really the colors I would recommend you to substitute with a DMC, and you probably wouldn't see too much loss or difference really in the color. these other colors, I handpicked a few which I think really should not be substituted just because they're so variegated and beautiful, and it makes such a I guess it does make a difference in the design because then you can really see the shift in the colors happening. So the first one, which is one of my favorites in this pack, is Mediterranean from Water Lilies. It is this bright blue to like lighter blues, and it's just a gorgeous color. The next one, this one actually could be substituted. I pulled it because I thought it could be substituted because the variegation is kind of slight. It's almost like a stone color. It's called Forest Ash by Thread Gatherers Silken Colors, but I can't really find a DMC equivalent for it in my stash. So yeah, here's another one that you could substitute, but I don't really know what the DMC equivalent would be. Martina recommends, let me see, 927 possible. So here's another one where where maybe it could be substituted. This is another Thread Gatherers Mississippi Mud, number 173, and she recommends 779, which I don't have. So you can see it's like a brownish with some tints of green, yellow in it. I kind of would like to keep it, if you can. I think you should keep this one as a silk because of the variegation, but if you wanted to substitute it with a brown, I think that would work too. Here's another one where you can kind of substitute. It's another Water Lilies, and the Water Lilies are expensive, so I don't blame you if you try to substitute as much of these as you can, because they're like, what, $7 each, right? So this one is a more muted charcoal blue, that again I don't really have a good substitution for in my stash. I really don't have an extensive DMC stash, by the way, so I couldn't really find a color that would match it, but the variegation is kind of slight, as you can see here, and not really overly dramatic, so it is possible to substitute it. And Martina would recommend 336, but this is like more like a, you know, if you really had to, and not like a straight recommendation. Here's another one from Silken Colors. It's called Putting Mill Lane. It's this beautiful purple with different shades in it, and I love it. I think you should really keep this one. It looks really great with the flowers, because then you can get flowers with slightly different shades. And then the last one here is Monet's Pond. This one is from Gloriana, and you can see it goes from the purples to the blues, some greenish blue as well. Definitely recommend keeping this because the variegation is just so beautiful, and it does make a difference when you stitch this, or at least so far what I've seen of it. So yeah, that's basically it. I don't think I can talk about anything else. I haven't done any beading yet, so I don't know how it is to bead. I'm working with a Q-snap, so I will have to do beading at the end if I don't want to crush them. And I don't know if I'm going to use the invisible beading thread or if I'm going to try matching thread. So we'll see about that when I get there. That might be months before I even get there, so who knows. So yeah, that's it so much. I don't think there's anything else. Oh, hey, Kitty! Say hello to Pebbles and hello to Bam Bam. Sorry, I'm on my bed and the cats are getting really curious about what's on the bed. So yeah, I'll just end it on that note, and thank you so much for watching. I hope this has been helpful to anyone at all. Oh yeah, specialty stitches. So there are some really good diagrams, like for instance, without going into, you know, the pattern itself, there's a diagram of how to do a Jessica stitch and how to do a Dan's Road stitch and things like that, and she will talk about each section and give you special instructions about specialty stitches, what colors to use, how many strands and all that. So definitely read each section as you're working it to make sure you don't miss anything, but generally you lay down the cross stitches first, and then you worry about the back stitching or any of the specialty stitches. So yeah. So thanks again everyone for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you have any questions or any comments, or you want to share any of your experience with chatelaines as well, please leave a comment below. I'd be happy to respond. And yeah, hopefully next time I have a whip update, I have more progress to report on my chatelaine. And just one last look before we go. It is so gorgeous. I really love stitching this. And because each little part feels like a finish, like when I finished the little inner border, and then my next goal was to get all the flowers done, and then the next goal was to do this border with the windmills, and then the goal was to get all the corner, and then the big border around it. So everything felt like a little finish, and it was so motivating to get stuff done and move on to the next stage. So yeah, that's it again. And let me see if I can get another kitty shot. Hey Pebbles, do you want to say hi? You want to say hi to the camera, baby? Aw, yeah, he's being bashful. Anyways, so have a great Sunday. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. Hope you get lots of stitchy time. And I will talk to you next time. Bye!